So if you want to turn it on, just press the display button here and you go straight into it. So from the factory default, it's in movie mode, and you can start recording by pressing this button here. There's a really good thing called snapshot, and what that does, if you press, instead of turning it on here, you can press this button and it starts recording straight away, even if it's when it's in sleep mode. Now what you want to do with that is you want to set it up into a custom mode to turn on to what you like, otherwise it'll revert back to the original one. I'll show you what that means. In the custom menu here, you can set up custom scenarios. So I've already done custom 1, which is 1080 and 30 frames per second, or I did one slow motion. Go back into the settings tab here, and there's this thing called snapshot, and in here you can set up what you want to do when you press this button here straight away. So you can start recording in the last settings that you had, put it on video, photo, slow motion, time lapse, hyperlapse, or whatever you want. But what I like is I like to set up some custom ones, and you can tell it as soon as I want to use the custom one when I use the snapshots. I'll turn it off. So now when I press that to quickly capture something, bang, it starts recording, and it records it in 1080p 30 frames, which is what the custom one was. Because I've been caught out before where the last thing I did was take a photo, and then when something when something quick happened and I wanted to quickly capture it, I pressed that and all it did was take a photo. To get to the main menus, you can press this little button down here on the screen, and it takes you to the video, photo, and custom. So once you're in video, you've got all your settings. You've got your loop recording, slow motion, high dynamic range video, the normal video, you got time lapse, and then you got hyperlapse. You can also go to the photo. You've got bracketing, auto exposure bracketing, photo, burst shot, and then time shot. And then here you've got your custom ones that you can set up. When you want to play back something, you scroll to the right there and it puts you into the play mode. And if you want to delete stuff, you can delete it there as well. You can also put stuff in favorites. There you go. That's hyperlapse. The fastest mochaccino, frappuccino, the fastest cafe frappuccino in the West. You want some? Joe. Yeah. That's a good girl. You have a little bit too. The different ways of shooting video, you scroll up, you can choose the resolution, 4K 4:3. Alright, so this is at 4:3. So the entire 1.5 inch sensor is used up. So most times you want to shoot at 1080p, quad high def, 16:9, 2.7K. So what's that? QHD at 30 frames. Jerry, what have you found? You found the fly again. 1080p, 16:9. Okay, so this is 1080p at 24 frames per second on the Rocksteady. And I've got it on the inbuilt microphone. And this is me walking, talking, turning, spinning. The bottom one here is how many frames per second. Things like cinematic looks that you can use, like 24 frames per second or 25 frames per second. YouTube, I think, mainly uses 30 frames per second. Most people just use that. If you want to do more action shots, yeah, you up the frames per second, and that way you can slow stuff down and in post. There's a thing called the 180 rule you can use, where you match the frames per second with the shutter speed. Now to do that, for instance, let's go to 24 frames per second. So choose that. Alright, now what you've got to do though, if you've got to change, you go scroll to the right, and then you got auto, which will expose, the camera will expose everything. It'll pick the shutter, it'll pick the ISO, whatever. The rule with the 180 rule, with the cinematic look, is you double the frames per second. That's what the shutter speed you should set it at. So the way to do it, you go into manual, and then in here you can choose your shutter speed over here. So you see how there, so I've already set it to 150. So that's 24 frames per second, double that, that's 48. So the closest one is 150. And then you see how now I'm two stops over. That's too bright now. See that little EV, it's saying it's 2 stops over what it really should be. So the way to fix it then is to go to the ISO and then scroll this down until you get to roughly the EV that you want. Say around 200 is underexposed. So the shutter, the ISO 400 is about right. And now you're in that cinematic 180 rule. Or if you just don't care too much about that cinematic rule, you just go over here, chuck it in auto, and it figures it out for you. You can also use exposure compensation here if you want to make it darker or brighter. Okay, 4K HDR. That's what this is. Jerry. 4K, Jerry. HDR. Yeah. Also, the camera goes about 11 meters underwater without an external case. Also, remember to put the side bit on if you've taken it off, to put the microphone on. The water will get in if you don't have that side thing. So the menus, the main things that you want to look at is you want to set up your custom, which is this little man figure here. And so you can set them up here. So what you want to do, so set up what you want first. Let's set up burst mode. Okay, I want to take 5 shots, for instance, and the ratio I want to be at 4:3. All right, so now if I go into the menu system, go to that little man, you can add that, and I'll put that in slot 3. So burst mode 4:3, 5 frames, JPEG at whatever, and save that. So now that's in your favorites custom 3. What burst mode is, if you press it and hold it down, it'll take shots. It's good for action shots. Ready, Jerry? Now to get to the customs, you can either go to down here and you got customs and you can pick what you want, you know, from the 3 menus. But the best way to get through any of them is to use the side button here, which is like a select button. It's a quick select button. You can cycle through what you want, and there they all are. To set up what shows in the quick switch, click that little icon there at the top, and then in the quick switch you can pick what you want to be in the quick switch with these little radio buttons here. This sun thing, that's just the brightness of the screen, that's all that is. That you can lock the screen if you want. If you want to unlock it, just go like that. This is auto, up or down, the rotation of the screen. This is called spot metering. So what spot metering mode is you can pick on the screen where you want the sensor to meter the light. If you want to then lock it, you just hold it in and then it locks it into that auto exposure lock there.
Jerry, what are you doing? What are you looking at? Huh? What's out there? You try some spot metering, Jerry? Jerry, you don't eat the flies. That's a big blowfly too, you idiot. You, a naughty girl. Huh? What did you do? You don't eat the flies. Naughty. Jerry. Hey? Why did you eat the fly? You always eat the flies. You
This one here, voice control. Enable or disable voice control. So if you get into it, start recording, and then it starts recording. Stop recording, and it stops recording. If you want to know what the words are that the computer understands, in voice control you can see a list of commands that you can use. So start recording, stop recording. Oh, you idiot. Stop recording. There's the list. Yeah. Photo, switch. You can even... You little... It's very... So it understands pretty good. It just went to the bloody front screen. If you want to get back to the... If you want to switch between screens, you can either use voice command, which I just did then, or you can use double tap like that, and it goes to the front screen, and then double tap and it comes back. Or I think if you hold this button here, hold it down like for 1 or 2 seconds, then hold it down again and it comes back. You see that? So, but the voice control is pretty good. Switch. Oh man, that's awesome. Switch. Yeah, good. So I've connected the app, and it's slow there. And then this one last here is the full front screen on, full front screen off. So I'll show you what that means. Switch. When you now go to the screen at the front, it's the complete full. Oh, you bastard. Switch. It's the full screen there. If you go to switch, switch, switch. You're not listening there. Full front screen off. Now switch, switch. You see how it's got bars there, 16:9 instead of the full 4:3 screen. That's all that is. When you want to take normal photos, so you go into the photo mode, it's best to scroll up. It's best to have a second or 2 seconds, probably a second's better, countdown, because these things, they're so small. When you take a photo, your hands are always going to shake. So for instance, now if I go there now, it's going to wait the 1 second, line it up, and then take a photo. Rather than when you press, these things are so small you can't really grip them. So have that 1 second delay, or 2 seconds, whatever you want. Line it up, steady, bang. If you want to take bracketing shots, you can use this one here. So the bracketing shots, what that is it takes multiple shots and then you've got to stack them together in the computer. Just go into AEB, that stands for auto exposure bracketing. It'll show you down here plus and minus, that's saying plus and minus exposure. So once you're in there, you scroll up, and then here you can say how many shots you want. So you want to take 5 shots with each exposure separated by 1 stop. So because there's 5 shots, you'll get -2, -1, 0, +1, +2. There's your 5 shots. So the best thing to do is put it on a tripod, because it's going to take 5 shots at once, and you want the shots to be exactly lined up together, one after the other. So when you stack them together and blend it, you're not going to have overlaying. Look, I mean, look at that sky there. I mean, that's a classic. I mean, have a look at that. You know. So have a look at that. I mean, that's, you know, that was the original shot without HDR. Then you've got your wireless connection, you know, click on that and set up your wireless. Wind noise reduction, a lot of people, I think, turn that off because it comes out too tinny. What most people do, if you want really good noise, sound, you can get the adapter. I've got another video about that. Face orientation exposure. So what that does is it'll latch onto you. If you see a face, it'll expose for the face, which is pretty good. Grid, that turns on, you know, those lines there, so you can set up your rule of thirds and whatever. You ready? That's the DJI. That's the main features in the DJI that it can do. I mean, all the other bits are just part of the menu system. You can figure it out yourself, but that's pretty much it. So it's good camera for sports and for everyday use also. The Rocksteady is pretty good. I've got the gimbal as well. Hey, Jerry, he stole my chair. Huh? He stole my chair, Jerry. Here's the gimbal. I put another video for this about it's a cheap gimbal and it's pretty good. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching.